Hold on, I gotta let my dog in.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Bryan Tann, and this is another edition of Tann Talks. So I got to give you guys a little bit of a peek behind the curtain instead of going to my normal spiel. Just as I hit to go live, Melinda D goes, "Oh, hurry up! Hold up! I gotta let the dog in." It's like, but I've already started.
I was gonna be like, I appeared like magic.
There you go. Oh, you want to
Do they?
talk about magic? Oh my goodness! What's going on, everybody? This is Bryan Tann. I'm your host of the Plotaholics Presents Tann Talks, and with me, as always, as we talk The Last of Us, it's Miss Melinda D. Melinda, how you doing? All about that
Hey.
bass.
Yes, you know what? I'm going to toot my own horn for a second. I know you know,
Please
but I
do.
know the listeners don't. I am working towards becoming a scuba instructor, and
Mm-hmm.
I've been stressing really hard this class I had to take. It was physics and bio and chem and all the crap that nobody remembers from high school, and I
Yeah.
nailed it. I nailed it.
Nice.
Passed, and yeah, it was awesome. So
That's what's up.
I was
You.
floating on a high, and then I watched this episode.
Oh yeah. Then this episode just completely and utterly just like
Hmm.
torpedoed all joy.
But
Yeah.
that's me. How you been?
You know what, man? I realized that I have to give up coffee. Um all last week I only got between 2 to 4 hours of sleep a night. Like that's all I was barely getting. And functioning at a very high rate. I'm making some very, very big changes in my life that I'm kind of keeping it on the DL for now due to other things, but it's going really, really well. But it's like, going strong, going strong, going strong, and not sleeping, your body's going to start to break down.
Yep.
So,
If you don't take a break, your body goes, guess what? It's time.
you're
That
taking a
happened to me
break.
like 2 weeks ago. Too
Mm.
bad. You're breaking down now. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can only ignore the check engine light for so long.
Right. Well, what was crazy though was that so I go to bed Saturday at about 10, 11, and I woke up at 2. And I think, yeah, it was closer to 11, and I woke up at 2, and I was just like, I'm up now. So then I tried to, take some more CBD oil, and that didn't work. Use I have this lotion that's supposed to help promote sleep. That didn't work. So then I go downstairs to the living room, and I put on Scott Pilgrim versus the World because that's what we're watching. That's what we're going to be talking about on the Plotaholics. And I'm still not fall. It's like I'm exhausted, but I'm not falling asleep. So I start going through
Hmm.
all this deliria. I mean, I'm like negotiating with God, and like I don't even remember half the stuff I was talking about. And so I finally woke up. I was like, I remember saying, just give me 4 to 7 hours and I'll be happy, please. I woke up after 5 and I was like, okay, cool. And then as soon as I woke up, I watched this episode. I was so happy to sleep, and then I watched this episode.
Yeah. Are you a hot sleeper or a cold sleeper?
I hate being cold.
Oh, I'm the same. So, I'd laugh because I would never, to be relevant to the episodes. Yeah, just said bleh, 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 bleh. Clearly, I need more coffee. Disaster fiction. You sleep wherever you can, whenever you can, right?
Yep, exactly.
If I don't have a weighted blanket, I'm not sleeping. I'm just
I
not.
I have to get. We have like a sheet, 2 blankets, and then a knitted blanket to act because the cats threw up on my weighted blanket. So that's what we're
My
using.
husband laughs. He's got the bed sheet and the comforter, and then there's me, and I'm that TikTok video going around with the and there's 7,000 blankets. That's
Yeah,
weighted
I
blanket,
need.
fluffy blanket, knitted blanket, comforter, sheet, socks. I have neoprene under socks that I wear to stay warm.
See, I
I'm
can't wear.
a mess.
See, I can't wear socks to bed. I can't have all the clothes on for bed. That drives me nuts. It has to be
Well, I
minimalist.
do it because I can tuck my pajama pants into the cuff, and this way, when I
Mm,
roll over, you don't get like the one leg at the knee and the other leg down. You get
gotcha.
like sketty pants
Gotcha.
going on. Yeah,
Gotcha.
keep my pants down.
Well, see, what gets me though is that if I can't move around freely, it bothers me. So when Odette lays in bed with us and she's holding she's holding everything in place, then I can't move, and then I wake up grumpy. It's like The Sims. I was like, and I'm like throwing punches at the air.
It's if Ron's not home, like if I go away on a trip, right, and I come home, the bed's a hot mess, sheets everywhere, blankets everywhere. When he leaves and it's just me, like I fold the blankets down a quarter, I tuck in, I put it on, and you would never know I slept in the bed because I don't move. Once I get in the spot, that's it. I am like that for the rest of the night. I don't move.
See, I'm the weirdest sleeper that I know. I gotta roll over. I gotta roll and roll and roll and roll. Like I'm like Log. I'm like the Ren and Stimpy Log shorts. I've got to roll around, but the covers cannot move off of me. I'm allowed to move, but the covers aren't. But then you talk about things disappearing. I dropped Miss Odette's training collar transmitter, and I can't find it now. And it's like $152 to replace those. I'm like, Harry Potter gonna have to Accio that shit out of the ether then, because I ain't spending $152 for something that fell under the bed.
Maybe it's hanging out with my car keys that have been missing for a year and a half.
It's possible. Those jerks. They run off somewhere.
I got home, so I know they're in the house. Damn if I know where they are a year and a half later.
Seriously. Well, you want to talk about things that just don't make no sense and just are heartbreaking? Endure and survive. Yes. Now, this episode, this was our first sort of real cliffhanger style episode, because you figure our previous episode led up to this. We meet the Kansas City QZ, and and we find out what's going on with Kathleen and company. And for those that have played the game, there is no real rhyme or reason as to why, Henry and Sam are being hunted. Right. they don't get into it in the games. You're just led to believe that these guys have their own life going on, and here it is. So I do like this deviation from the source material here. I do appreciate it because, it's kind of cool. We get a why. And the one thing that the games didn't do a whole bunch of is introduce us to life in these other quarantine zones, because these quarantine zones, they aren't all the same. They're their own little city states, because, we find out, because we saw with the Boston quarantine zone, I mean, yeah, it ain't great, but they're not raping people. That we know of, but that's what they're saying with the Kansas City quarantine zone. They're like, they were brutal. They were murdering people, raping people, doing all types of terrible things. Kathleen's brother is leading the resistance. They're peaceful fireflies. And even we find out that Henry, played masterfully by Lamar Johnson, was one of Kathleen's brother's most loyal followers. And then he sold him out for leukemia treatment for his baby brother, Sam, who is played by, was it Kevon Montreal Woodard?
Yeah, Kevon. It
was either Kevon or Kevon.
Thrilled. I watched the after clips. If you watch it on HBO Max,
I did. I watched it. I did watch it.
They have that little clip at the end, and I'm trying to teach myself ASL, and I follow somebody fantastic on Facebook, and he does a lot of clips with ASL in TV shows and movies, and talks about how accurate it is, and hire deaf people to play deaf people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do not hire hearing people. Now, if hearing people are like Henry is, right? Right. Signed because his brother is deaf. Great. Do not, if you can hire a deaf actor to play a deaf, character, do that.
I was absolutely.
So happy that they did that.
Well, they changed, and that was one of the bigger changes too, because Sam in the games is not hearing impaired. He's just a kid that his big brother takes care of. So I kind of understand the why, because number one, and they even said in the after show that they wanted to give, Henry a further reason.
Yeah.
You know
It
what I
adds that
mean?
level of dependence.
Right. It's to have Sam like truly depend on him. Like he's not only depending on his brother to take care of him, but now to save his life. And it really makes you think and wonder if you went to an instance where if our loved ones have sort of a physical disability or an emotion, if they have something that's looked at as a disability that requires us to care for them, are we going to really take it one step further than we would if they were able-bodied or able state of mind? Does it make it easier to accept fate if it's someone that's able-bodied with no real issues? But when it comes to the fact that, oh, they've already got this challenge, they shouldn't have to deal with this too. And it's really a philosophical discussion.
And I think they even say that. And I don't remember if it was in the show or the after show, but he says, how far, because they made a point about how much would you light things on fire to save the ones you love. And I looked at
Right.
Ron and said, I'll let the whole world burn.
Mm-hmm.
I will let the whole world burn.
Oh, absolutely. I would, if, like, I've told my son, I've told Bryan Jr., I will rip the entire state of New Hampshire physically off of the Union. I will figure out a way to tear that entire state piece by piece if I must and throw it in the Atlantic Ocean. He goes,
Yep.
I know, Dad. I know. I'm like, okay, long as you're aware. And what's funny is we see a little bit of a flashback of the previous episode where we find out where the doctor that we met in the previous episode, what happened with him. You've got Sam and Henry and this doctor hiding out because they're in those days of the resistance taking the QZ. Right. And it's pretty intense. Like that
was hard to watch.
It was hard to watch them taking it over because it's looking like just this riot and this crazy unrest. Mm-hmm. And the whole time I'm wondering, where the hell are all the infected? But then I remembered the previous episode when, remember they went into the building and you saw the ground and how it looked like it was like fluttering and they were scared of it. And I was like, oh, they better pay this off later. And so we see everything going on and we see that Henry and Sam have escaped with the doctor and they're hiding out. And Henry is told, Sam is afraid because you're afraid. So he tells him, this place is ugly. Let's make it look better. 10 days later, that place looks like one giant comic book. And you're seeing where Sam is drawn.
That was awesome.
He's obsessed with superheroes, and that explains why he's got that. And I mean, this whole episode, I'm not even going to lie. I was crying this whole episode because the Sam character reminded me a lot of Bryan Jr. at that. Because, when I first played The Last of Us, Bryan Jr. had a similar haircut. Mm-hmm. Sam's a little bit older than Bryan Jr. was at that time. But still. And now Bryan Jr. is 14 and I'm seeing it and I'm watching it. And it's reminding me of him when he was little. And just seeing how this kid is being so brave. Because, his big brother is, empowering him.
Mm-hmm.
And
I love that Henry didn't just plan for his physical needs. They had food and stuff. But he brought crayons.
Yeah, he had all the crayons. He had the paint. He had all this stuff to keep Sam occupied.
Mm-hmm.
While he's watching.
A long way when he's got all this going down.
Right, and he's watching everything to find out what's what. Meanwhile, now we see why Kathleen has such a hard-on to hunt both of them down. Not just one, but both. And I'm sorry, man. Melanie Linsky was amazing in this.
She plays a good psychopath.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, there are times, though, where and this shows how good of a villain that she was, though. You find yourself agreeing with her a little bit. A
Yeah.
little bit.
I don't
Not to
know.
the
I have a
point.
very hard line for kids. Like
I do as well.
I
I didn't I like Sam is where I drew the line. Henry, I got
yeah,
it. I
I
got
got
it
it.
with
But when
Henry.
she's like, "Sorry, Sam's got to go too," I was like, "Wait, what? This
Right.
kid survived leukemia. He's hard,
And
he's deaf, and he's gonna get. You're gonna kill
he's gonna
him
get
because his
killed for
brother did
something
what
that
he
he
said
didn't
to
even
do.
Yeah.
He didn't even do.
Yeah, he had nothing to do with it. He ain't asked his brother to do all that. And she goes, "You can't tempt fate." And it's like,
And then we're gonna
that is
kill Ellie
cool.
just because she's with you. Oh, she's
Right.
with Joel. She
Because
didn't do
she's with
anything wrong,
Joel.
but
Because
she's got to
she's
die
with
too.
Joel, and Joel killed Bryan. Well, fake Bryan.
She did a lot of cut your nose off to spite your face. Like when she executed the doctor. Like I get
Right.
you're pissed at him, but how many people in your little community are doctors?
Right.
So the next
How
time you
many
have
times?
a problem, you're screwed because now
Yeah.
the only guy that can set bones so they don't die from infection or save Bryan because he's bleeding out, or fake Bryan because he's bleeding out, you just executed him because you're mad?
Because you're mad.
What? Yeah.
And what's crazy, and it lets you know how off kilter she is, because her brother, he was like, he told me to forgive him, but I'm not. And it's like, whew, the Kansas City QZ was not going to last for long, honestly, even after they got their independence. Because look, I get, man, fight the power, fight the powers that be, absolutely, but
Right.
they weren't going to last that long. Once they
Don't
caught,
shoot yourself in the foot.
right, like honestly, I would find anyone that had any sort of medical training, you're holding on to them like they are precious metal. You hold on to a doctor as if he were a pregnant woman.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doctor is a pregnant woman, she is the holy effing grail.
Yeah.
But no, she's letting her, but her rage is sort of frightening though, because it's so quiet. It's quiet and gentle. Like she could have been on Sesame Street, dude.
But
She
kids,
could have been.
this is what happens when you let your emotions run you instead of letting your, it's what I tell my kids when they get pissed off. Like when you get that mad, that upset, that angry about something that has gotten its bee up in your bonnet, your thinking brain shuts off.
Yeah.
And you are in fight or flight or freeze. And that is what she was stuck in completely. So
she was just stuck in destroy. Yeah, she was just stuck in straight up destroy. And that is
why
just.
Are you talking to my mama? Well, if your own mama can't convince you that this is a bad idea, like.
Right. Mom, like even like here's the thing, man. Moms just have that ability to cut through things. Like dads, we have that to a certain extent, but not like a mom, because that child didn't grow up in us. So it's much different. But if you are that mad that you cannot take to heart the words of the person that you love the most,
exactly,
there's a problem. So we get to the present where Ellie and Joel are, they got the drop on them. And what's great is you notice how Henry and Sam work very, very well together. Like Sam recognizes when something makes noise because of Henry, and as soon as Henry goes, nah, he's done. Like they work together so perfectly well. And he tells him, hey, listen, I'm not going to hurt you. You're not going to hurt me. You need to get out. We need to get out. We're working together because I know how to get us out. And I love the fact that we find out later Sam and Henry had Joel and Ellie at gunpoint with empty guns, which was absolutely hilarious. But it lets you know it was very convincing. And I know if I'm Joel, I'm like, this fool really got me with an empty gun. But that's when we find out that Henry is and I guess it's a term that's gone from QZ to QZ, collaborator. And as soon as he says, I'm a collaborator, I don't work with rats.
Yeah.
First thing out of his mouth, I don't work with rats. He goes, well, yes, you do if you want to get out of here.
You do now. Surprise.
Yep. And then, of course, we start to find out, and You notice though in this episode, I think this is the episode, and I think it also happens in the game. This is when Joel affection for Ellie comes out. You see
Yeah, you
him
start to see
doing
that.
everything to protect her. And when he hears her being a kid again with Sam, he recognizes she's more than just a potential cure. She's a child.
Well, the dichotomy there of when he goes, you and your dad, Henry says something about, your dad, and in sync, they go, he's not my dad, or I'm not her, I'm not her dad.
Yeah.
And it was just like immediate. There was no delay there. There was no, well, you and your dad, he's not my dad. It was immediate.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, when they're chatting in the bunker, and Henry goes, you may not be her dad, but you were someone's dad.
Yeah. And I loved how he did that. You were someone's dad. And that shook Joel. That really shook him. Because now he's remembering, yeah, I was. And no, I'll tell you what, that was a beautiful moment. This episode, the one thing all these episodes do so well is that it characterizes Joel in a way that we saw in the games. And Pedro Pascal is so good at being the gruff, dangerous guy, but having that little bit about him. That little bit of gentleness that's still hiding. Even though he was never a gentle person, the capacity is there. And
so he's reminded of what he was like at one point.
Right, exactly. And I'll tell you what, man, I love how he's able to maintain the gruff exterior, but you can tell the changing. And that's that subtle nod. That's what makes him so good at playing Mando in The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
With us not seeing his face ever. It's that physical presence. It's that physical presence of being able to emote. And I gotta give some love, especially, we've talked about them. Lamar Johnson was so great in this.
So good, yeah.
Like him and like our main four in this episode, period. They worked off of each other so well. Like, honestly, the last episode it felt like a lull from the Frank and Bill episode. If this episode would have been right after the Frank and Bill episode, it would have been one of those, like, it actually lowers my rating of last week's episode because this is so much better.
And that's what I said. I said, inevitably, there's going to be an episode where you just have some crap you have to get through to be able to finish telling the story in this kind of emotional, impact. And that's what last week's felt like to me a lot, was just, this is all the crap you have to. It's that chapter of the book where you're like, all right, I really don't want to read this, but I know I have to because it's going to get so much better in the next chapter.
Right. And that's really what it was. So we find out that they're gonna travel underground because the Kansas City Fedra had driven the infected underground.
Yep.
And they were gone. They were in tunnels. They were gone, which is why you're not seeing them in the streets anywhere. So they're going through, and I'm waiting for something bad to happen while they're underground.
Me too. Because it's like, and they've killed them all. And Joe's like, like, you can really trust that? And same. I was like, because they kept changing. They shot that really well, where they were walking and the flashlight would like dim out, and then they had passed to another spot in the tunnel, and the flashlight came back on. So you felt like you were walking these tunnels with them, not just watching them travel. It was the same. I was like, oh, is it going to be around this corner? Is it coming now?
And that's exactly what I was waiting for. Like, when is there? And like, because they even mentioned, you saw a clicker. Yeah. He goes, wow. I'm waiting to hear it. And then we discover that there were actually communities that lived underground, which was really cool. And that's really where we got to see the Ellie and Sam relationship further blossom, where Ellie is almost like becoming like the best friend that Sam needed, because his big brother is all he's got, to the point where his brother is almost playing a father role.
Yeah.
Ellie is close enough to his age now that he's able to feel like an actual younger sibling, not a child. And watching these, and I'm sorry, and I really hope that this doesn't sound disrespectful when I say it, but as much as I love to hear the joy and laughter of children, hearing Sam's laughter and joy, it just hit me in the feels in another way. Like I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, especially
Mm-hmm.
knowing that what we're going to get to. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched it yet. Yeah, we're 25 minutes in. You ought to know by now. Spoiler alerts are there. And this is when Joel and Henry start to get to know each other better. They're coming out. They're coming into the neighborhood. Everything's looking good. And here comes the gunshots. Joel, of course, is the only one not nervous. Like, how do you know we're going to be good? He's like, is this guy can't shoot for shit.
Yeah.
He's a terrible shot. I'm going to go around. You just stay where you're at. And you discover it's an
Well, I
old
think
man.
right there, before you even get to that, that's another spot where we see his relationship with Ellie evolving.
Yeah.
Like, you're not leaving me. And he's like, do you trust me?
Right.
In the past, he would have just been like, 3 episodes ago, it would have been, you stay here, I'll be back.
I'll be back. No, and she's like, no,
you're
you're not leaving me. And that's
Yeah.
why he looks at her. Do you trust me? Yeah, I'll be back.
Yeah.
Like that moment, he's told her, I will always protect you.
Mm-hmm. And she believes it.
Yeah, she knows that up is up, water is wet. Joel will do what he says. And Joel,
I'm not cargo anymore.
Right. And I think that for Ellie, that's a big deal because we don't see Ellie evolve the way she did at the end if she doesn't recognize she is no longer cargo to Joel. And I love that fact though, when they even at points when they were walking and Henry is like, well, maybe we could come with you. And Joel's like, no, I don't think so. And she goes, yeah, he does this all the time. He tells me that I can't do anything. And then I ask him and then I beg him. Then, oh, well, fine.
I ask a million times, and anybody who is a parent was like, yep, that is exactly how it goes.
The kid will ask, and they will ask, and they will ask because they know that you are going to give in. It's like it's like a video game, and you're just hitting at that shield over and over and over and over again. Or in my case, you're playing on Hogwarts Legacy, and they put up the Prego, and you keep hitting it with Incendio, and it finally
every
breaks.
Day my kids are, can we go to Starbucks today? No, not today. I got to stick up on. Okay. An hour later. Man, I really wish we could go get some Starbucks. No, I don't have time. Okay. An hour later. But Mom, you're going out. Can't you just get it on your way home? This is the 5th time you've asked me this question in 10 minutes. I'm done.
You know what? Will it shut you up? Possibly.
Yeah. Tell some more bad jokes and then maybe.
Yeah, exactly. So we're like, all right, this is going to be great. Now, if you've never played the game, you're like, all right, it's going to be 4 people going to see Tommy. Happy days! But if you played the game, you're like, here's your tissue.
See, so I have not played the game, as I said. But you
but you knew what was coming.
Get your tissues ready. So I'm like, there was a part of me that was like, maybe this is where they'll go a different way, like they did with Bill and Frank. And maybe they'll get to stick around. Or one of them will. Well, and like I was hoping for it. I really was.
I was too. I'm not gonna lie. I knew what was. I'll tell you what. It was just like in episode 1. I knew what was gonna happen, but I was praying to God it wouldn't happen. Like honestly, I want Sharon because Sharon's father is hard of hearing. Both of her parents are, so she knows ASL. She knows ASL, and I'm learning. So I seriously want her to watch this episode so that she can tell me how accurate it is. So
I can tell you from the little bit I know that the stuff I saw, like when she says her name, that's one of the first things I learned how to do was my name, and then you finger spell it, although it's backwards because I'm on thing. But like my Ellie, that's the first thing she learned was how to say my name, Ellie. So when Ellie spells out her name, she spells it out correctly.
Okay. Yeah, that's
like
the one thing. Yep. So and that's what I really appreciated when they were saying that eventually the entire crew, everyone on the production was signing so that they
Yeah.
could communicate, and that makes me start to tear up. And watching that kid sign when he was being interviewed, like,
Mm-hmm.
man, I wish that was my son. I
It was
wish I was
awesome.
his dad. He is such like, and you've heard me talk about this, but you know how there's certain people, certain actors, certain individuals that just have this look about them where you just want to hug them and give them all the love you have
Yes.
to give. That kid, absolutely 100%. So Joel goes up, and I'm purposely, there's part of me that is like purposely delaying getting further on because I'm gonna start crying. I'm feeling it already. So Joel gets up to the second floor where he finds the shooter, and he discovers that Kathleen and company, they're coming, they're on the way.
And you
And
could see his humanity there too, because he's
yeah,
like,
because he didn't want to
he didn't
kill the
want to kill
guy.
him. He's
And
like,
he's
just
like,
slide the gun,
please.
wait an hour, please. And then you hear the bang. I was like, oh, damn.
Which means an old boy, you know what? And that's gotta hurt when you try to give the person every opportunity, but they force the you or me.
Yeah.
And then here comes the crew, and Joel is getting it done, boy.
Yes. He's a damn good shot.
Joel is the American sniper. I don't care, man. Joel is American sniper. But then,
so we got Henry, Sam, and Ellie behind the car, and Joel is hanging up in the house.
Yep, and he's covering everybody. And he gets that one good shot. And everything is going down, and Kathleen is being villain of the week. And then you see the truck, and I'm like,
oh man,
that's when the sinkhole came back.
Okay, so honest to God, people are afraid of a lot of things, right? Arachnophobia, open water, right? A lot of people are afraid of open water. Open water doesn't bother me. My literal biggest fear in life is that a sinkhole will just randomly open up underneath my feet. I am terrified. And when I saw that truck start to tip, I was like, oh, here it comes. It's a sinkhole. And I started to get anxious because of that, not knowing what was coming next.
Well, why do you think, like, honestly, we had a thing, I think it was like 2 years ago, when one of our buses went into a sinkhole. And I was like, I'm glad I don't ride the bus no more, dude. And I'm not driving. Yeah, and matter of fact, and then I think it was in the same area when the one bridge collapsed here. I'm not taking that way ever again. Ever. But yeah, so the truck hits, the truck explodes, it goes into the sinkhole, and here comes the infected. And it's like, and what got me is that this is the most chaotic we've gotten with the infected since the first episode. And
so anybody who lives in Texas will tell you fire ant mounds, when you kick a fire ant mound, it's not like a regular ant hill where they just kind of come out. When you kick a fire ant mound accidentally, preferably not on purpose, that's what happens. They just explode out of this hole. And suddenly you're covered in a billion of them, and it's been a half a second. There is no slow moving whatever. You kick this ant mound, you've got fire ants up and in your cowboy boots before you can blink. They are that fast. And that's exactly what that reminded me of, was like, oh shit, they kicked an infected hole, like a fire ant mound. And it was just, they just flew out of there, and I was not prepared for that.
So Florida, Texas, and Australia, 3 places that I'm never, ever, ever going to go.
Okay, well, to be fair, though, there's not really a surprise fire ant mound. You see them.
Oh, okay. So it's
you'll see them, because they'll like, so like, this is the ground, and you've got this little tiny one for a regular ant mound. Fire ant mounds are huge, so you can't miss them. They're these big mounds sticking. They're just there. They're huge, and it's very unlikely that you will step on one accidentally. I mean, it'll happen, but
well, they don't understand.
Usually, we'll see it coming.
Gotcha. Fair enough.
Yeah, no, they don't.
And these infected just tore out, and it's just insane. Ellie is doing her
there too.
Yeah, they had clickers. They had a mix of everything. And then, but you see Joel is saving Ellie left, right, and center. And he's doing all that he can to save. Sam and Henry got under a car. And hearing Sam scream was getting me so upset. Because just watching him scream and seeing that terror was getting to me. And then, but Ellie, man, you want to talk about Ellie got it done, but it freaked me out when that little girl clicker got in there and she did that little flip and whatnot. I'm like,
So
fuck
my
other
kids are
people's
weird,
kids. Okay.
right? Like I've mentioned that my kids are weird, right? And it's
Yep.
relevant, I promise.
We've had this discussion.
My son will do this weird, like run at you thing on all fours, just because he is a weird kid, right? But he does it to like creep you out for a half a second. My daughter Ellie does acrobatics, so she will just drop into back bends, roll over the backs of couches into handstands, and
Oh my god.
that shit that she did in that car is the exact same crap my kid would do. Both of my
I was
kids.
just thinking.
Like, oh
I was
my God,
just
it's my
thinking
kid.
that. I was just thinking that. I was like, that's Melinda's Ellie in this scene.
Yes, 100%.
That's what she reminded me of.
I was simultaneously glad to see that it was actually a child clicker.
Yeah.
Because usually, like, especially in The Walking Dead, kids are either alive and fine or they're alluded to. Like when they saw that baby seat that had the blood in it.
Yeah.
You had to put two and two together.
Right.
Kids just go poof in apocalypse fiction. You don't get to see. I mean, how many kid zombies did you ever see in 11 seasons of The Walking Dead? One? In episode 1?
Episode 1, Sophia and
yeah, Sophia.
And
Sophia
Carl's
wasn't a
friend.
random character. We kind of assumed that Sophia would have been.
Right. But
and even then, she's an older kid. You don't see younger children. I mean, for obvious reasons, right? Like, I don't know too many 3-year-olds that would sit and let you do that clicker makeup, right?
Right.
But kids just disappear. You never see what happens to them. Well, so I liked that they used a child.
I like that too. Well, I think, and to your point, I think the reason why kids are just gone in those scenarios is because they're so small, they're devoured. There's nothing left of them.
Yeah, but I
that's where my
real
mind
reason
goes.
Is
you're not getting a child.
It makes us uncomfortable.
I think it's like, or even still, if you remember in Romero's original Dawn of the Dead, that was a big deal to have 2 child zombies attack the character Peter. It was, and what's even more dynamic for that is that it was 2 white children attacking a large black character. And this guy threw those kids and then shot the hell out of them.
And I think
that was a big deal.
It makes us uncomfortable.
Right. It really does. So I definitely applaud the producers for doing this. And then, of course, that child was a sort of a Chekhov's gun because that's the clicker that got Kathleen. It didn't
couldn't have happened to a nicer person.
Oh, and I mean, that sucker beat the death into her.
Yes.
Like, I don't even think she bit her
for even a second.
I don't even think she bit her.
She just,
she bit her after she beat her up. Okay.
Yeah.
But then we're seeing all of these infected come out of this hole, and then here comes the giant bloater. The first bloater we get to see. Now, when the bloater shows up in the game, it is terrifying. It's, for me, it's up there with Mr. X in Resident Evil 2.
It seemed to me like in Left 4 Dead, when the brute or the tank shows up.
Yes, that's exactly
what it's like. Is that what this is? And
pretty much, yeah.
That's the equivalent in this one. And I'm like, oh, yeah, no, that's not cool. Like, that's terrifying.
And I give a shout out to Perry, aka Original Tommy. He tried. Mm-hmm. Now, they said that they wanted to do something where the bloater ripped him in half at the waist, but it's like, but how accurate is that? And I think that the tearing off of the head makes it a little bit scarier because it's not cartoonish. Because even anything that's a humanoid, to pick it up and just rip it in half looks very cartoonish.
Yeah, but very comic book, like Bane with Superman, right? Like, or Doomsday with Superman.
Right, but to do it with the head, I think that was a much better idea. I think that was a better way to go, personally. And I'll tell you what, man, it really got to me. You know, once we get through all this, everyone gets away. They're at the hotel. Everyone's resting up. Things are going better. And, you know, Sam and Ellie are reading. And then he's like...
And they do what every kid does. Time to go to bed. Okay. Close the door. All right, the lights are on. Let's go back to reading.
Right. And he's like...
every kid.
And he's like, aren't you ever scared? And she's like, she admits it, but she's like kind of joking around. But then he's like, but do you think, I think he asked her, like, what are you afraid of? And he was
Aren't you
like,
ever scared? And she says,
oh,
I'm
yeah,
scared all the time.
right,
And he kind of looks at her sideways, and that's when she goes, of scorpions. And
right.
then, he kind of rolls his eyes at her like, listen, lady.
I'm being serious right now.
Right.
And he goes, if when you become a monster, do you think it's still you? And I
I
was
started
like,
bawling.
because why he's asking.
Mm-hmm.
And
For half a second, I thought, maybe is he remembering, like, did this happen to his parents?
right.
And
Is he
then
having
what
an unpleasant
actually
memory?
happened, right, what actually happened kicked in, and I was like, oh, and then that's when I started crying. I was like, I paused it, and I got up, and I was like, I took an emotional lap around the living room, sat back down.
I ugly cried. I actually called Odette over to me and I held her. I was bawling so hard. I mean, I had snots. I was just, and Ellie was like, it's okay. My blood is medicine. And he's like, and then she cuts herself and he's like trying to stop her. And she's like, no, it's okay. And she puts her blood in his wound and rubs it. And she goes, you're going to be okay.
If that's not one of the most kid things to do, like, there was no thought there. There was just action. I can help you, whether you can or not. I can help you. Let me help you.
But I think that was also the last bit of her innocence, because they're telling her, they told her, you're immune. Now, granted, she's not immune. She's a carrier, so she has the antibodies. At least that's the way I read it. Like, if she were to mix blood with like a perfectly healthy person, I personally think that she might infect them, because she's a carrier, but because carriers create the antibodies. So, and he just says, will you stay awake with me? And she says, yeah.
I broke.
She gets up and you just know. Know.
There's that part that held on, like, ooh, she's sitting on the edge of the bed. Maybe we're all right. Maybe he's just pissed that she fell asleep in the chair.
And then it's just and she's just screaming. And then Joel's trying to save her. And then Henry, it was natural. And I'll tell you what, that's exactly almost shot for shot in my memory. Because he tried to protect his brother. And then just when he attacked and he just reflex shot him. And that's what he said. What did I do? What did I do? I'll tell you what, though. The what did I do is what got me. I mean,
his voice cracking, and it was just, what have I done? And I was like, oh. And then I heard, give me the gun. And I was like, no, like I was super anxious already. And then I just got more and more and more knowing what was coming next.
Yeah. So we get to them digging the graves, and Ellie goes, which way's west? And like a little princess, she just started walking. And then just looks over her shoulder. Are you coming? Like, I'm going whether you come or not.
Yeah.
And she just wrote, I'm sorry.
Again, that was just,
it was too much. This episode was too much.
Like, there's no way she could have saved him, but she still felt guilty that she couldn't. And tell me that's not the most, like, when your kid trips and skins her knee, I'm sorry, I got blood on the carpet. It's not your fault.
Right. Bryan Jr. apologized because we were boxing. I was teaching him some boxing, and he landed a great flush punch. And he started crying and was like, Dad, I'm sorry. And I'm like, It's okay. That's what we're here for. That's why I'm wearing the headgear. He's like, but you're
like when the kids get sick. Yeah.
And they apologize.
And they throw up. I'm sorry, I'm throwing up. For what? You can't control it.
Right.
And it was just, oh man.
It was just so hard.
Yeah, and that was emotionally. It was Bill and Frank all over again, but worse because kids were involved.
Yeah, well, the thing is with Bill and Frank, it's worse to me than Bill and Frank because it was on their own terms. And Frank had already been sick.
Yeah.
So
I just meant in the emotional, like,
yeah, in the
I felt
emotion, yeah.
attached to
It
these
was
characters.
yeah, it was just as emotional, but it hurt so much more because of the fact that it was with, little Sam. And then
Yeah.
I think that this is when we start to see that shift in Ellie, where she's not this kid anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like her childhood is now dead after this. But there's still that little bit of Joel, the father Joel, that's there, because now when he's walking after her, it's like, this is our purpose. And I'll tell you what, the way my brain is telling me that the season finale is going to go, it's going to make what happened in episode 1 look like a hug by comparison. I'm talking about
So
when the guy points the gun at Ellie and Joel goes
yeah.
all Hulk smash on him. Yeah, it's gonna get worse. But
we get to the end of this episode, and I was like, "That's it. I'm done. I cannot."
I was kind of like that too.
The show, like, I'm done.
Honestly,
and
I wanted to stop too.
Over, yeah, and he's like, "You've got 4 more episodes left," and he's like, "I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's going to get worse."
It is.
I was like, how many times have I walked away from a series and have to come back because I was just too, like, all right, so Final Fantasy VII, however many eons ago that came out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Get to the end of disc 1, I took a 2-month sabbatical. I said, I cannot do this. Emotionally, cannot do this. And, I mean, I enjoy being on your podcast too much to actually walk away, but it was,
I don't
done.
blame you. I don't blame you, because I was close to it also. I mean, we've got 4 more episodes. Just so you know, 4 more episodes. But I'm not even.
The other piece of this is it speaks to the abilities of the young men that played Henry and Sam, and that we got 1 episode and 10 seconds at the end, right, of the other episode. We got 1 episode with them, and I cared as much about them as I do about Joel and Ellie, and all it took was 1 1-hour episode. And as an actor, to be able to do that and to get people to invest in your character that hard, that it has that emotional impact at the end. I mean, how many characters do you get? Like, I wasn't emotionally attached to Tess at all.
Mm-mm.
Not that I don't want to say I didn't care about her and what happened, but
her death really. Was like, that was badass. It was like a hero's death.
Right. And like, how many shows have I watched where I'm like, I really just don't care about this character? And I've had seasons with them.
Right.
But it took 1 episode for me to be like, I can't watch this show anymore. That emotionally invested in these characters, that it really speaks to how good those 2 young men are at their craft, that you cared that much that quickly.
Right. I agree. Like, if I were to go back to watch this season, I might have to skip this episode, because this has been the best episode so far, but it's also the most heartbreaking. Like, this episode brought tears to my eyes and snots to my nose. Miss Delphine is trying to get up on the thing here. She's happy that she has
some support.
Yeah, well, she's also got she's feeling happy that she has more freedom around the house, because Miss Odette's in her crate, because the gentlemen from Windows Nation are still putting in the windows. They're doing such a great job too, by the way. They really are. Yeah, shout out if you need Windows. Make sure you guys check out Windows Nation. And they didn't pay any money for that either. I'm just happy with the service. But no, I'll tell you what. This next episode, I'm very interested for, because now we get to see Tommy and Joel reunited, and this is going to be good. And Ellie even gets told, watch out for Joel. So I think we're going to find out more of the difficulty that Joel is carrying.
The worst people, be careful who you get close to, because the people you trust are the ones that will betray you. And I was like, oh no, I'm not prepared for this. I need to stop. I want off this train. Make it 12.
Yeah. We've got 4 more. We've got 4 more episodes. We can do this. You know, and I think the next time we got to do a happier show. We're gonna have to do a happier show, dude.
Let's do some
Like,
Sesame Street episodes.
there you go. I was gonna say Gilmore Girls, but Rory Gilmore starts to piss me off after she goes to Harvard.
I'll fangirl over Jared Padalecki for the whole first season anyway, so it's probably not worth it.
But no, this show, you need a palate cleanser for this show, and it's not so much like it's a negative. It's because the emotional toll is so strong.
Yes.
And to your point, before we bring in Bartender Smiley, I had to stop watching what's that show called? The Outlander or whatever, where the woman goes back in time to Scotland.
That is my favorite show.
I can't watch it. Because I got to where they're in America, and the complete dismissal of slaves, it triggers. Like it.
Okay, so I have read all of the books.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they do address it later on in the season when that happens.
Okay.
Claire, and then later her daughter Brianna. Claire is pissed. So there's a whole scene. I don't think it made it into the show, but there's a whole scene in the book where they're walking through a slave market, and Claire is like mouthing off to all of them. This is bullshit. This isn't fair. These are people. And she just goes off on it. So they do address that really hard in the books.
I am planning on starting the books. And
Davina Porter, and this is not a paid subscription for Audible. Davina Porter does the Audible books. She's divine.
Okay.
Absolutely divine. If audiobooks are your thing, because the narrator can sometimes make or break it.
Yeah.
Davina Porter does all of them, and she is fantastic.
Is she on a scale of 1 to Jim Dale reading the Harry Potter books? Where is she at? Because I love Jim. Oh no, because Jim Dale is amazing reading the Harry Potter books.
I will tell you, I've listened to most of the Neil Gaiman books on Audible, and he narrates them himself. And I would listen to that man read the dictionary because his voice is just divine.
Fair enough.
On a scale of 0 to Neil Gaiman, I would put Davina Porter at an 8.
All right. You know what? You've convinced me. When my next Audible credit hits, I'll getting the first Outlander book. You know what? Maybe we'll I don't know. You know what? I want to think of something else to do with that.
The last season of Outlander is coming up. There's season, I think, 7 and 8, or is it 8 and 9? But they said they're ending it after the next season they're filming, and then they're going to do a prequel.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you what, Sharon's actually been wanting to get back to it, but when I told her that it was triggering, she was like, okay, I understand. But I know she really
I totally get it.
No, me too, man. I think she's just hot for Jamie. Speaking of who's not, I guess. I don't know. I'm not, but okay. Well, you want to know who I think is possibly hot for Jamie? Is Bartender Smiley.
Yes.
So let's see what he has to say.
Bartender Smiley.
The Plotaholics rating system for the movies is a pretty simple system. Basically, they rate movies based on how many shots it takes to get through them. So if you got a good movie and you get through it all the way sober, then it takes 0 shots to get through the movie. And then if you got a really bad movie, then it could take up to 5 shots to get through the whole thing. I think you can try to figure out the middle part yourself. So, what can I get you?
This is like, I needed nothing to drink. I didn't drink water. I didn't drink tea. There was no alcohol. I needed a gallon of water afterwards because I went completely and utterly parched with crying. 0, 0, 0. Best episode of the season so far for me.
I am 100% on board with that statement. I am the same. Didn't need anything to get through it. Didn't need a ton of water afterwards because, like you said, so dehydrated from crying. I needed something, and it was amazing.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
And this is the second episode also where Joel and Ellie, I don't want to say they took a back seat, but they weren't the primary focus. They haven't been the only focus. You know how some shows, like there are shows where if the main character isn't the main focus, the show suffers. And it just goes to show just how great the writing is, how amazing Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal are, and how great the supporting characters are.
Yes.
So next week,
if you care about them,
right? Exactly. You care about all of them. Like, and this is the last thing that I'm going to say about this. It's this show takes everything that was great with The Walking Dead without making The Walking Dead's mistakes. You know what I mean? It's not trying to do too much.
The breadth of literature in The Walking Dead, right? And you've got the people who are like, it has to be pure to the comics, and other people, it has to be its own thing, and it's a blend, and you will never make any of them happy.
Right. And I think with this episode, they went into it and were saying, hey, listen, some of the stuff in the video game is going to be here, some of the stuff isn't. And that's it. They're not trying to please everybody. They're telling a good story. And shout out to
them. That's what they said at the end, I think, in the director's chat at the end of the episode, episode 3, it was the Bill and Frank episode, was they said they made a conscious decision. Is the addition we're making to the story going to add to it, or is it going to take away from it? And if it takes away from it, we're not doing it.
Right, exactly.
If they're changing it or modifying it or whatever, they're only doing it if it has that emotional impact, which, good. And it did. Absolutely. Bravo, guys, because it definitely did. And I will send you my therapy bill in the mail.
Absolutely, because you owe us. So with that being said, we're going to be back next week with the episode 6 entitled Ken. This is going to be interesting. Business is about to pick up in Joel's personal life. So make sure you rate, you subscribe, comment, and hey, if your comment really, really jives with us, we will talk about it. So that's Melinda. I'm Bryan, and we'll see you guys next week.